All right, let's bring him in. He is the host of Temptation Island. The new season dropped on Netflix last week. Multi-time guest on the show. We love having him on. It is Mark Walberg. Mark, thanks for coming on again, bud.
Glad to be back.
It is, I got to say this right off the bat. There's going to be a lot of gushing on this episode because honestly, Mark, I thought this was the best season you guys have had. I really do. About halfway through, I was like, I don't know. But some of the character arcs this season I thought were some of the best ever. And it's a credit to you, a credit to the production team behind this show. It was, in my mind, the best season you guys have had. Really,
I think it's a great season too. I can't take the credit for it. David Friedman, David Goldberg, David Friedman running the show. They put together, Netflix is another level.
Yeah.
The casting department at Netflix is amazing. David did a great job on the show. I thought it looked spectacular. And, my role is my role. So I just tried to step up to that level. But it's so much easier for me when there's a cast that's got, something to talk about.
Yeah, so say the least. And I think, just format-wise, moving over to Netflix from USA was obviously a big jump. We know the streaming services do really well in the reality TV dating genre. And then I just think the aesthetics of it popped off the screen. It looked really good.
Really beautiful.
And now for you, and I didn't know how I felt about it at first, but then once I was into it, I was like, okay, this is good. I don't want to wait a week for every episode. Did you like all the episodes at once, or do you like one once a week?
I don't really have an opinion, Steve. I may be different than a lot of people that do my job, but I love doing the work.
Yeah.
I love being with the crew and being with the staff, being on set with the grips. I love getting into the conversation and being real in those moments. And then after that, I've got no control over it anyway. So, it's kind of cool that people are binging it and I'm getting all these messages. And it's kind of cool that it doesn't draw out over like 5, 10 weeks, 3 months of time where I got to be careful what I say and stuff. But truthfully, my investment in all that, I'm a passenger. You know what I mean? I just try to hit my marks and do my thing and hope for the best.
Yeah, I was, like I said, at the beginning, I was like, man, I kind of like Temptation Island once a week. And then once I started binging, by the way, I finished it all in one weekend. Like I just could not stop watching. And
it's crazy. We did too.
Because I wanted to be like, wait a second, where is this going? Where is this going? Oh my gosh, Bion, are you kidding me? And then it's just like, wow. And I want to start there because, and the only thing I guess, maybe the downside of 10 is because we don't know how many people that are listening to this right now have watched all 10. Maybe somebody's on episode 3 and episode 6.
Too.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to spoil stuff, but at the same time, everybody's talking about it online. So
yeah. And it's like, what's the time frame do you give people on something like this for 10 episodes? Like I did it in a weekend. Like I expect everyone else to do it, but I know obviously that can't happen. But we are going to talk about everything that happened on the show and people know this. So I want to start with Bion and Shantae because I thought his character arc was one of the more fascinating ones we've ever seen in the history of the show because I'm guessing like most other people, women in general, and probably even a few men that were watching, including myself, were probably yelling at the TV when everything went down with the threesome saying, good God, how could this guy possibly think that this is acceptable, that this is okay, and just playing it off so flippantly. And then Mark, we got to that bonfire at the end. It wasn't the final bonfire. I think it was the penultimate one where we then find out about all this trauma this kid has had in his past. And it broke my heart for the guy. And I'm not saying that excuses his behavior.
No, but I got to tell you that for me, I felt like I may have made a mistake because I wish I had gone there earlier. I'm trying to early in these bonfires, and I don't know anybody. I don't know the background. I only know what I know. But I'm always trying to find some way into like, you're complaining about behavior, you're complaining about things you want. What's behind it? And had I really kind of dug into him quicker, I would have said, this isn't really about sex. This is about abandonment and anger and and a little boy who never had any idea what it's supposed to be. And so I'm not condoning his behavior, but it makes me understand the compartmentalizing of, like, so I do this thing that I'm completely disassociated from. It's just a thing. And we can make all kinds of argument about like threesomes and all that as conquest rather than sex. It's avenging things that have happened. I'm not a therapist, but it doesn't forgive the behavior, but it sure gives you an understanding and a little compassion for the kid, because he had no break.
None.
He had no chance. What do people expect? That, you're going to just be from foster home to abuse to raising yourself to all this shit, and you're going to be able to know how to navigate life in a healthy, non-toxic way? He needs, in my opinion, he needs some professional help. And he started digging that out. And you don't see that in the bonfires, but I definitely say that to him. But I guess if anything, I feel bad that I didn't go there quicker. But I'm the host of the show. I'm not really a therapist. And so I'm trying to figure it out as we go. And, it went the way it went.
Even though everybody at home wants you to be their therapist, because they think you're absolutely great at your job. And there were just a couple instances this season where you really nailed it. And I know a lot of people are sitting at home saying, exactly. When Mark says that to somebody, I sit there on my couch and I say, yeah, exactly. And, the Bion thing with Shantae was really interesting, because I think midway through the season, there wasn't a single person watching this season that was like, oh, these two have hope. There's a way to get through this. And then you get to the end and then you find out, okay, there's a lot deeper here. This guy, the only reason he's saying the things that he is about threesomes and sex is because of where he came from and his past. Now, the thing that is interesting to me was the fact that they did decide to leave the island together. However, Shantae, when expressing that, never seemed to have a smile on her face. Like, I feel like she was even still
felt uncomfortable.
Herself. Yeah.
I'm without knowing anything, I'm pretty sure she had decided not to stay.
Yeah.
When she came to the bonfire. And it's kind of weird because Bion said, look, I don't even need to apologize. She's going to take me back.
Yeah.
And she walks off. And then that's another place where I was like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do here as a host, because my gut was to go over to her and say, now, come on, you know what you need to do. But also, it's really tough line for me, because it's not my job to decide for them what they're supposed to do. Ultimately, they're grown-ups and they've got to do what they got to do. So the line of where to intervene is tricky. And so, and you know what? Now that I've had to think about this so much, Steve.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, maybe Shantae knew his background. So maybe where she has grace for him is to know how so many parts of him have been broken in the past. So you just can't know.
Mark, until you brought that up, I never thought that in my head. I figured she did know. And you're saying she might not have known until they were sitting there?
No. I'm saying she may have known more about him than we thought she did, which gives her the reason to say, yeah, he acts out.
Yeah.
But I know the real guy. And also, I don't think she's like that frail, emotional woman that, he cheated on me. And I think she's kind of matter of fact about his flaws,
Yeah.
And ultimately, love is love. You can't judge it. It felt a little really like she was being a hostage.
Yeah, it did.
For us, but I don't know how much of that is projecting on them stuff that is not true. So, my heart's with them both.
And I was fine with her first statement to him when she had to give her decision, which is not right now, essentially. You need time. I need space. You need space. And that seemed to be logical to me.
If I could have pulled her aside, if that was appropriate, I would have kind of broken the wall. Maybe I wouldn't have done this ever, but my head later was like, I wanted to say to her, look, walk away now. And in a week or two, you guys can get back together. The show ends, but life doesn't.
Yeah.
But again, that's being proactive beyond what I think my role is. But like the audience, it was really visceral for me. It was really tough to sit there and watch, so,
yeah.
And more importantly, it was tough to sit there and watch and not do something.
Yeah. No, it definitely was. And, this is somebody that I could, everyone mid-season was like, there's no way these two could ever last. There's actually a part of me that thinks they can if Bion gets the help that he desperately needs. He needs to talk to a professional and learn way more about himself before he jumps back into a relationship, whether it's with Shantae or
I'd like to think
anybody
that we
else.
kind of broke open a little bit of area for him to consider it.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd ever made the link between his behavior and his past.
No, I don't think so
And
either.
so, man, that's a long journey.
Yeah.
And as despicable as his behavior and his words seem on the show, you got to remember that it's a show. So there's more conversation than you see. And God, I may be a Pollyanna dude, but I don't think he's a bad guy.
No.
I really think he's like 90%, 80% good guy and 20% fighting the worst demons a guy could fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have some space for him.
For sure. And, I guess I was going to ask you this to the end, but I might as well bring it up now. Are we getting a reunion show? Is it still in the works, or is it a no, or we don't know?
You know more than me.
Okay.
I don't think so this season. I think that would have happened at this point. I think what you're going to get is some sort of Netflix where they now update would be my guess.
Okay. And I think that's what we want.
I can tell you, I keep in touch with people. Mm-hmm. I have no idea where people are. The only ones I know are Alexa and Lino.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't really have any idea.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of us, kind of want to know. Like, has he gotten the help? Did they take a break when when the camera stopped rolling? She's like, well, maybe I should take a break.
I know.
You need to get help for yourself. And yeah, it would be good to know. So I want to move on to Ashley and Grant, another interesting, very, very interesting couple that had some issues they had to deal with. Grant, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong here. We know he has a daughter, but he said he was never married to the mother of his child, correct? He apparently, I guess, cheated on her when they were pregnant or after they had the baby.
I'm not sure about that, Steve.
Okay. Yeah.
I really don't. It's a little confusing.
Yeah. But basically,
I'm not sure if he was with her and cheated on her with Ashley. I really don't know how that.
We know there was cheating there, right? There was cheating in his past.
I mean, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And then Ashley and him just had this, another one where you're just like, wait a second. Mid-season, you're like, okay, well, clearly, Ashley was making it known, walking back into the villa. I'm single. It took her a few episodes. She was definitely hard to coming around to the process. She crying a lot, but then she sees the clip of him in the shower with Natalie, and she's just like, I'm single, and here we go. And then it turns into this guy is thinking that was going to be okay, and then telling her he loves her in his 30-second message, and she's kind of having the same response I think that a lot of us at home were, which is like, what does this guy really think that he can do this and get away with it? And then at the end, he's the one that says, I want to leave alone, where I think most people thought he would probably leave with Natalie, and she's the one that leaves with Danny. Right? Danny. So again, another kind of 180 where I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. If you ask them in episode 5 or 6, how do you think these two are ending up? I think everybody would say Grant's leaving with Natalie and Ashley's leaving alone,
Yeah.
A
couple of things about that is like before she sees the clip of him cheating.
Yeah.
She seemed to production and all of us like really ready to bolt.
Yeah.
Really having a hard time. And then so we go in that bonfire. I don't really know what's in the clip, but I know something bad is coming. And producers are like, she's gonna leave. She's gonna go home. I say, don't be so sure. I've seen some crazy stuff happen. And it was really interesting to me that she sees the clip and her response is the first smile we get. And she says, I'm relieved. And I think people can relate to the fact that you've got this suspicion, in your heart who somebody is, and you're holding like this hope against hope that he's not that guy. And then when you see him being that guy, there's relief that you're not crazy. So, and that was the turn for her to start getting empowered, start having a good time, and, start expressing herself. And, so I guess that's a good thing. I don't know.
Yeah. And opening herself up to Danny, because she was pretty closed off to Danny and the other guy whose name is escaping me. The only two
Logan.
that she was in, Logan. Yeah. The two that she was interested in.
You got to love Danny, right?
Yeah. Just seemed like a really good guy.
Sweet guy.
And I think, and the reason why I think I said I like this season the best out of all of them, and I'm not saying that casting didn't do a good job in the past, but I feel like, I think you can say in some past seasons, I think the singles were more about just creating maybe salacious TV or whatever. I actually really bought into some of the singles and bought into, I think they would be interested. And then the couples themselves, while we all know that most people that are at a crossroads, quote unquote, in their relationship wouldn't really choose to come on a show like this to determine whether or not they should be together. They'd probably just go to counseling or have better communication. But I also felt like the 4 couples on this show were not out for any sort of TV fame or anything like that, or Instagram followers, or looking for something after this. I don't know. It felt a little bit more or more real to me this season. Not saying I didn't enjoy the other seasons, and there weren't some couples that were really legit and had some good stories. For some reason, these 4 really, I don't know, they really resonated with me, and I really liked the choice of these 4 couples. Really did.
I liked them too. Even with all their flaws, I was always happy to see them, which is usually the case. I mean, I kind of go there with them, but I just thought that, and there's no slam to people on the seasons past.
Yeah.
Each season, and I think that's one of the things that makes this show really unique, is that it's as different as the couples, whatever their cast. But I just thought these people were able to express themselves, whether you agreed with them or not. They were able to say what was going on. I thought, they were just a little bit different level, and the singles too. So, from a physical aspect of everybody's beautiful to, them being able to express themselves, I thought that was, another level. And again, my hat's off to production. I know you spoke to David Freeman, didn't you?
No, I haven't spoken to David.
Oh, I thought you had spoken to him, but yeah, he did a great job, and casting people at Netflix are, next level. And so, and I can only do what I can do with what I have. And I thought, I just thought it was all well done.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. When you were sitting there at the final bonfire with Ashley and Grant, did you have any expectations in your head of where you saw it was going? Were you surprised at what Grant said? Were you surprised, or were you happy with Ashley standing her ground? What did you think of those two while you were going through final bonfire with them?
I was a little surprised that Grant kind of turning it on her a little bit about the love she wasn't able to give him. But maybe there's some truth to that. I just felt like watching them that rather than keeping score of who's right and wrong, this just wasn't feeling right, them together. I kind of thought he was going to leave with Natalie. I was surprised by that.
Yeah.
And I thought she'd leave alone, even though she and Danny were really vibing. So, but that stuff I don't really care about. I mean, it's like whatever you choose, I'm down. I don't know.
The next couple that I want to get into, I thought was your best work, and that was Taylor and Tyler. Tyler has a very, very calming demeanor to him, where this guy, I mean, he was this never had one of these highs, never had one of these lows. Very well-spoken guy. I think he was a little misguided in some of his thought process, but he wasn't a guy that flew off the handle or ever went off on anybody. Just very, and you just don't see that on the show. Usually someone gets mad, and it's just like you say, in the emotion, what you're feeling right now, don't let that, make you make any judgments towards anything else because you're angry or you're upset. This guy was just flatlined the whole show, but he was well spoken, and I thought it was interesting. But when I say it was your best work, man, when Taylor came out and talked about the fact that everybody in her life has not been there for her, or has abandoned. I can't remember if she used the word abandoned.
Leaves. Everybody leaves.
Everybody leaves. I'm sure you heard more of it, but we never got like details. Is this, she wasn't just talking about exes. Clearly, it must be family members as well. I don't know what her mom and dad situation is or anything like that, but the way that you stuck up for her and got this woman to believe in herself when it really looked like there was a rock bottom there for her where she just couldn't feel anything. And she really thought that she was a worthless human being. Like I really felt that from her, that she just thought nobody's going to ever love me because nobody has in the past for at least a long period of time. How in the world did, I mean, I didn't even say how in the world, because you're so great at your job and the way you were able to instill some confidence in this woman, because this was a broken woman.
Well, again, I always say you're not broken. You're just feeling broken.
Yeah.
Look, it was obvious to me. She'd talk about stuff and she'd watch stuff with a smile and a straight back and a clear voice and no tears. And I'm like, this is a really strong woman. And we talk about armor. I said, armor protects you, but ultimately it rusts. I don't know why I was trying to be all like dropping bars, but
yeah,
that's what came to mind. I'm like, and so I was intrigued with her because behind that strength is protection. And so when she said what she said, it broke my heart.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's so common. I think so many people can relate. How are you going to have a love relationship that's full when you go into it sure that they're going to leave? And more importantly, you're not worth it. And so I just had this I just felt like I saw her, and I think everybody does. And so you can kind of look at her and say, lighten up, be soft and loving. But like she's looking at it from a standpoint of preservation. So it's like, you haven't worked in a year. It's my house. And those are, in my opinion, surface issues.
Yeah.
But when she revealed and tears came that, look, her overwhelming feeling is she's just not worthy of any kind of love at all. Like if I would leave me too, she said. And that just, just crushed me.
Yeah. I mean, you even took it to where you showed up at the villa just to tell her that.
We had Case was going to come back in and the producers are like, have we ever done this before? Have a single return? I'm like, I don't remember, but I don't, this is Temptation Island. You don't have to have a reason.
Yeah.
Do what you want. I said, but I feel like there's something I could say that, I want to say. Are you guys down? And they're like, sure. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to say when I came in there, but I just wanted to say, look, which was true to me is that since the bonfire, she hasn't been out of my mind. And Case coming back because he was kind of interested in her. I'm like, look, I'm not saying there's any pressure. I'm not saying he came back and you're supposed to hook up and this is a thing. I'm just saying, let's use it as a metaphor, right? Here's this guy who apparently left for whatever reason, and he came back. And I just want you to consider that maybe that's something that could happen.
Yeah.
And it's not about you, but maybe not everybody's going to always leave. And maybe the sooner you kind of connect with that or start forgiving yourself, maybe that's as soon as there's an opening for somebody to step in, somebody really strong, somebody really able to handle your fears, And so I got a little choked up, which I hate because it looks like cheesy TV, but it was real for me. And if it moves something for her, I'm grateful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just felt like I had to say something. That's all.
Yeah. And you didn't want to wait till the bonfire to do it. You didn't need to do it in front of, the other women. It made sense in the moment, especially like you said, with Case coming back. Tyler leaving with Kay was her name, right? Kay?
Yeah.
I can't say I'm surprised by it. He spent all of his time with her. I don't know enough about, we had heard it on the show, 5-year marriage, immediately moved on to Taylor. Now he ends it with Taylor, immediately moves on to Kay. I mean, it could be a situation where this guy feels like he has to be with somebody at all times. Like you said, you don't know their situation right now. We don't even know if they've they've lasted post Island. But what's your assessment of Tyler during the show and then at that final bonfire and deciding to leave with Kay?
I think he's a kind, gentle soul. I think he wants to be in love. I think you're kind of right that maybe a little time with himself wouldn't be a bad idea. But, I think it was overwhelming and apparent really early that the relationship with Taylor wasn't working for him because he was downstream of a lot of anger and expectation. And he wasn't meeting it. And then he's I'm not going to say he's a softer guy. He's not soft. She kind of calls him out on that, but he's sensitive, and that was weighing heavy on him. And I think once he got to the island, it was like and got away, he was like, I feel a little bit freer. And so I think that explains a little bit about how quickly he kind of found somebody else, but he's a good guy.
Did you feel like the comments that she made, bitch tendencies, he says he felt emasculated by her, the fact that he didn't work for 10 months and she was very vocal about that. She paid for the house, she pays for the bills and all that. I didn't feel like that was out of line. There was clearly a power struggle in that relationship. It seems like they were not on equal footing here. Agree?
Yeah, I think she was saying her truth.
Yeah.
I think there was some truth there. It doesn't make it any easier to hear. Even if you're not working all the stuff, you still feel terrible when you hear it. And then it's sort of one of those things like for whatever reason, you probably don't feel great about what you're being able to achieve right now. But hearing it from the person you're in love with doesn't make it any easier. So I think he was feeling a lot of pressure, and what she was saying, he was aware of. And I think he felt relief kind of saying, I'm moving on.
Yeah. And I just want to wrap up here with Lino and Alexa, obviously the love story of the season. Just another really interesting arc, because I think when you saw Lino at the beginning of this thing, probably thought he would give in to temptation. Seemed like that was something he was knowing he was going to be tempted. And just to see his journey throughout the whole thing, see Alexa come to grips with the fact that she doesn't need to, 1 month into the relationship when she cheated on him, and here they are 3.5 years later, and it was still this struggle between them, to see them get to the place that they got to. Again, anytime I see an engagement on this show, I'm like, it's a really cool thing. I mean, we saw Kirsten.
Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah.
I felt like they were both in love. There was never a question. He had issues that predate her about, being not first choice in his family. And we had much longer talks in the bonfires. So that was a very clear issue he had of not having like swagger in that sense. And then she was carrying around a lot of guilt. It was very basic. And so I kind of tried to direct them into saying, I know you feel this about him and she feels that about you. Work on your own stuff. It'll make your love stronger. And I think they did. And I think we see it.
Yeah. And as far as I know, I believe they're still together to this day. So good for them. They're engaged. And yeah, it was just a really, really good moment to wrap up the season. So Mark, we love having you on. Temptation Island, all 10 episodes are out on Netflix right now. You can check it out and then maybe go to their Instagram profiles and maybe just do a deep dive to see who's still with
see what you can figure out.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me know.
Yeah. Mark, thanks again for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
You got it, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.